My daughter insisted on a paternity test. I asked her why. She said, "Because I'm good at singing and dancing. I look beautiful. And you're fat and ugly. There's no way you're my real mom. My real mom should be someone like Aunt Chloe." I was furious and dragged her to take the test. When the results came out, she cried. "Impossible. How can I be your biological daughter? I don't want to inherit your awful genes." She said that her dad had good genes, and all her flaws were because of mine. Any problem she had, she blamed on me. When her father cheated on me and demanded I leave the house with nothing, my daughter didn't hesitate to take his side, telling me to get out. I asked her, "Emily, I'm your mother. I've sacrificed so much for you." She cut me off impatiently. "Not this again. What have you sacrificed? You're just a stay-at-home mom who doesn't earn a penny. All you do is ask dad for money and act like doing housework is such a big deal. No one cares about your so-called sacrifices." Tears streamed down my face. I walked out in a daze. And in my despair, I was hit by a car. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day when my daughter was diagnosed with a rare illness. My husband had asked me to quit my job to take care of her. This time, I coldly refused. The story begins. My husband, Jack, stared at me in disbelief. "Anna, do you even understand the situation? Our daughter's illness is very serious. Someone has to stay home to take care of her and take her to regular appointments. My mom can't handle it alone. If you don't quit your job, how are we supposed to treat her?" I asked him in return, "Why don't you quit your job? Why does it have to be me?" Jack replied as if it was obvious. "Because you've always been the one taking care of her. I don't know how to take care of a kid." A chill ran through me, and I clenched my fists tightly. When I was pregnant, Jack had promised that I would handle giving birth, and he would handle childcare. A fair division of labor. I endured 2 days and nights of labor, suffering severe tearing. The moment I left the delivery room, Jack's mother leaned over and said, "Anna, it's a girl. Start preparing for a second child as soon as possible." Jack stood silently until I glared at him. Only then did he step in. "Mom, Anna is still very weak. Don't talk about that now. Boys and girls are equal in today's world." His mother reluctantly stepped back, muttering, "Girls are fine. Girls are fine." But her actions didn't match her words. Jack had claimed he would help me with childcare. But in reality, since the baby was breastfed every 2 hours, I was basically tied to her. Changing diapers, feeding, and everything else was my responsibility. My mother-in-law loudly declared her desire to help, but all she did was criticize. "Oh no, the baby's hungry. Why haven't you fed her? The diapers are piling up. Why haven't you changed them? Look at that rash. How could you let this happen?" Exhausted to the point of collapse, I still had to endure her constant nitpicking. Jack, coming home from work, would hold the baby briefly and then listen to his mother's complaints. When he saw the baby's rash, he acted like it broke his heart. The next day, after criticizing me, Jack went to work as usual. Before leaving, he dumped our child into my arms and disappeared into his study to sleep. How could he possibly claim to be taking care of the child like this? Now, he stood before me, acting righteous and using my supposed inability to care for the child as an excuse to demand I quit my job. Looking at his entitled expression, anger surged within me. "Is the child only mine? She's not yours." I snapped. "You said back then that I would handle giving birth, and you would handle raising and supporting her. So, tell me, what part of that promise have you fulfilled?" Caught off guard, Jack fell silent for a moment before replying. "Anna, let's be reasonable here. It's not that I don't want to help. I just can't take care of her while working. Besides, the baby is breastfed. And as a man, there's only so much I can do." I countered. "She's not breastfeeding anymore. And I still haven't seen you step up." "I have to work," he shot back. "At night, the baby is used to sleeping with you. Even if I tried, she wouldn't want me. Look, I know you feel overwhelmed, but don't forget, I hand over my entire paycheck every month. You're tired from taking care of the baby, but I'm also exhausted from work. Can't we understand each other?" Understand each other? I clenched my fists tightly. "Fine. I'll go to work. And you quit to take care of her. I'm not afraid of hard work." Jack blurted out. That's impossible. Why not? I pressed. Jack frowned, his patience wearing thin. Anna, be reasonable. What kind of man stays at home to take care of a child while his wife goes to work? Besides, I earn more than you. How much could you even make at work? I laughed coldly. Just $1,000 more than me? If it weren't for the time I lost in my career because of childbirth, I'd already be a department manager earning $15,000 a month. $5,000 more than you currently make. His face darkened, clearly uncomfortable. Realizing I was furious, he softened his tone and said, You love Emily so much. I'm not good at taking care of kids, and I thought you'd willingly quit your job, which is why I suggested it. I stared at him, the face I once found handsome now utterly repulsive. Jack, I said firmly, enunciating each word. I will not quit my job. Emily isn't just my child. What happens to her in the future is your responsibility too. Figure it out yourself. Either you quit, or you leave it to your mom to handle on her own. With that, I grabbed my bag and left the hospital without looking back, not even stopping to check on Emily. Jack called my name behind me, and the sound of our daughter waking up and wailing pierced the air. Anna, Emily's awake. She's crying for you. She's calling for her mom. Hearing her cries only made my steps quicker. Tears streamed down my face as I walked, choking back sobs, never turning around. I could never forget the day my daughter demanded a paternity test, or how she called Jack's mistress her real mom, while the rest of the family kept me in the dark. Nor could I forget Jack's cruel expression during our divorce, or the cutting words he spat. I don't want her inheriting your bad genes. But no matter how much he despised me, I knew I didn't carry the kind of selfish, heartless, and vain genes that he so proudly embodied. These traits were unique to her father and grandmother. My daughter, Emily, was diagnosed with a rare illness when she was 4 years old. She had a metabolic disorder that made it difficult for her body to process sugars from food, leading to a series of health complications. Without intervention, her condition could worsen, damaging her nervous system, limiting her physical mobility, and eventually leaving her with intellectual disabilities and an inability to care for herself. I was the first to notice something was wrong. Emily started having diarrhea and vomiting after eating, and her symptoms grew increasingly severe. She often ran fevers, and I noticed red streaks in the whites of her eyes. However, my mother-in-law and Jack dismissed it as a common cold or fever and didn't take it seriously. Even the small clinic we visited at first misdiagnosed it as a viral infection, prescribing some medicine to try. When we got home, they scolded me for overreacting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. So I took Emily to a well-known children's hospital for a proper examination. The results were heartbreaking. Emily's genetic mutation had caused her metabolic disorder. Why did this mutation happen? Was it inherited? Or did I cause it by eating spicy or sweet foods during my pregnancy? I asked the doctor, holding Emily tightly, my heart heavy with guilt. Ever since Emily was born frail and often sick, my mother-in-law had blamed me, claiming I didn't take care of myself properly during pregnancy. She said my diet of spicy and sweet foods was the reason for Emily's weakness. Later, whenever Emily had a fever or diarrhea, she would point her finger at me, saying I had indulged recklessly during pregnancy. She even brought up my choices during the postpartum recovery period. She criticized me for not putting a hat on Emily during the hot summer months, despite the doctor's reassurances that it wasn't necessary. It was over 30 degrees Celsius, and my mother-in-law refused to turn on the air conditioning, insisting Emily wear long sleeves and a hat. When I firmly refused, keeping Emily comfortable and turning on the air conditioning, it infuriated her. Every time Emily spit up or got sick, she would yell, "See? She caught a chill because you didn't listen to me." Happy now. Her constant accusations wore me down. And even though I had been confident I wasn't doing anything wrong, I started doubting myself. The doctor must have noticed my distress. He said, "You're a college graduate. How can you think this way? Do you understand what genetic mutation means? It's a change at the genetic level. Eating spicy or sweet foods during pregnancy cannot cause a genetic mutation. If it could, everyone in the world would have mutated genes by now. The causes of genetic mutations are complex, and sometimes it's just a matter of luck. To confirm whether it's inherited, we'll need to test both your and your husband's genes to see if either of you carries a mutation that could have caused this. When I returned home and explained this to Jack and my mother-in-law, she immediately burst into tears, accusing me. It's definitely your genes. My son is tall, handsome, and has a degree from a prestigious university. You only have an average degree. It must be your genes. Anger boiled over, and I snapped. The doctor said it's most likely a random mutation. It's not inherited. How could a mutation happen for no reason? There must be a cause. Either it's your bad genes, or you ate something during pregnancy that caused the problem. She retorted, furious. I got into a heated argument with her. Jack had to step in to mediate, trying to calm both sides. The next day, Jack and I took Emily to the children's hospital again for a comprehensive examination, including genetic testing, chromosomal analysis, and other diagnostics. We spent tens of thousands of dollars, but the results finally came back. Both Jack and I had normal genes. Emily's condition was confirmed to be the result of a spontaneous genetic mutation. The doctor explained that while the condition wasn't entirely curable, it could be managed with medication and strict dietary control. By the time Emily reached puberty, her symptoms would likely improve significantly. Additionally, regular physical therapy and cognitive exercises would be essential to ensure her motor skills and intellectual development wouldn't fall behind. Both Jack and I were working at the time. Initially, my mom was helping us take care of Emily, but when my brother had a child, my mom went to help him instead. Jack then asked his mother to take over. My mother-in-law was incredibly lazy. As soon as I came home, she would leave all the housework and childcare to me, acting as if none of it was her responsibility. Jack worked far from home, often staying late for overtime or traveling for business, so he wasn't much help either. When Emily was diagnosed with her condition, I created a detailed list of dietary restrictions and precautions, emphasizing that her sugar intake had to be strictly controlled. But that very evening, I caught my mother-in-law feeding her porridge. I rushed over and shouted, "Stop! She can't have that." My mother-in-law was furious. "What's wrong with you? It's just porridge. There's no sugar in it." Angry, I explained, "I told you at lunch. Porridge and rice are starches. They turn into sugar. She can't eat them." She lost her temper, slammed the bowl down, and snapped, "Porridge isn't sweet at all. There's no sugar in it. You're just nitpicking because you don't like me. Fine. I won't help with the kid anymore. Do it yourself." With that, she stormed out and slammed the door behind her. I told myself, fine. If she won't do it, I will. I resigned from my job soon after to take care of Emily full-time. Her diet needed meticulous care, and she required constant physical therapy and exercises. I couldn't trust anyone else to handle it properly. After much thought, I decided it was safest for me to do everything myself. So, I became a stay-at-home mom. At the time, I didn't realize how much that seemingly right decision would cost me later. With one less income, the entire household relied on Jack's salary. The mortgage, car payments, and Emily's high monthly medical expenses all fell on his shoulders. The financial strain on him grew, and with it, so did his temper. We had fallen in love and married freely, and before our wedding, Jack had been handsome, sweet, and accommodating. We were genuinely happy together. But after the wedding, during my pregnancy, his mother's involvement began to chip away at our relationship. Once I became a stay-at-home mom and Jack became the sole breadwinner, the pressure on him became unbearable. We started arguing frequently, often over trivial matters. But the core issue was always money. As the saying goes, when poverty knocks, even the strongest love suffers. I did everything I could to ease our financial burden. Apart from rehabilitating Emily and helping her with her physical and cognitive development, so she wouldn't fall behind her peers, I cut back on everything. I stopped buying clothes, started cutting my own hair, gave up all my hobbies, and cooked the cheapest meals for myself while preparing special, separate meals for Emily. I stretched every penny to its absolute limit. All my efforts paid off. By the time Emily started elementary school, she was doing just as well as any other child her age. The doctors confirmed that her development in all areas was healthy and normal. But as Emily grew older, another problem began to emerge. She became more self-conscious and vain, wanting to fit in with her social circle. She started asking for snacks and treats, things that were forbidden for her condition. After my mother-in-law left, she found life in her rural hometown too dull and began frequently showing up at our house under the guise of wanting to see her granddaughter. Jack had given her a spare key, so she came and went as she pleased, often without any warning. Once she arrived, she wouldn't leave. Her unannounced visits were bad enough, but they came with their own set of problems. As soon as my mother-in-law walked through the door, she started criticizing everything. The floor is so dirty. When was the last time you mopped? Why haven't you thrown out the leftovers in the fridge? The child's clothes are filthy. Why haven't you changed them? It was as if, now that I didn't have a job, I was obligated to keep the house spotless, take perfect care of Emily, and cater to the entire family. I had thought about divorce many times, but I couldn't bear to leave my daughter. Back then, I never considered the possibility of leaving without her. A mother's heart is soft. I feared that if I left her in a family that favored boys over girls, they wouldn't take proper care of her or continue her treatment. Her whole life could be ruined. But taking Emily with me wasn't realistic either. How could I work and care for her alone? My mother-in-law stayed under the pretense of helping, but she often talked badly about me to Emily. I caught her doing it twice, and each time, it led to a huge argument, leaving the house in complete chaos. Sometimes, my mother-in-law would buy snacks for Emily, which infuriated me. I would throw them out, refusing to let Emily eat any of it. But to Emily, this made me seem unreasonable and controlling. Many people say that children's bad behavior is always the parent's fault. But unless you've been in that situation, you don't understand how helpless a parent can feel, especially a mother who is in a vulnerable position and fighting alone. Emily didn't listen to me. Her father and grandmother gave her money, bought her treats, and spoiled her, while I was constantly telling her what she couldn't do or eat. Over time, her heart turned against me. To her, her dad and grandma were the good guys, and I was the villain. When it came to matters of health, I had no choice but to yell to make her comply. She thought I was trying to control her and making a big deal out of nothing. While I admit there were times I overreacted, most of what I did was for her own good. Unfortunately, my well-intentioned actions only made her resent me more. She even blamed me for her illness. I wouldn't be sick if you hadn't stuffed your face with spicy and sweet foods when you were pregnant. And when I was a baby, you let me catch a cold by exposing me to the wind during your recovery. It's all your fault, she shouted. It hurt so much I felt like spitting blood. When Emily asked for a phone, I firmly refused. But Jack, eager to win her favor, bought her one. After that, Emily became obsessed with watching short videos and playing online games. The internet's algorithms bombarded her with videos based on what she searched for. When she looked up controlling mothers, she was flooded with content demonizing parents, praising rebellion, and promoting escaping toxic families. These videos egged her on, encouraging her to defy me and even run away from home. She was too young and impressionable to recognize the manipulation, and I became her enemy. Our relationship grew increasingly strained. By the time Emily was in 3rd grade, Jack had been promoted and received a significant raise. His annual salary eventually reached $500,000, but he kept it a secret from me. He continued giving me $6,000 a month, which covered all household expenses and Emily's medical bills. I later discovered he had visited prostitutes several times and even kept 2 mistresses. I suspected as much but couldn't find any concrete evidence. During that time, I tried looking for a job, but it was impossible. Emily couldn't eat at the school cafeteria, so I had to prepare her meals and deliver them myself. She also needed physical therapy 3 times a day, which I had to oversee personally. Her condition made her more prone to infections, so frequent hospital visits were necessary, along with regular checkups to monitor her progress. I was completely trapped, unable to leave the house or carve out any independence. By the time I turned 35, finding a job became even harder. It wasn't until Emily reached middle school that her condition finally stabilized. Her diet no longer required strict control, and her physical therapy was reduced to occasional sessions instead of 3 times a day. I finally felt a bit of relief. I thought my struggles were finally over. But then another woman entered the picture. Her name was Chloe Zhou. She was divorced with a son, and Jack became infatuated with her, completely obsessed to the point that he wanted to marry her. He even took Emily to meet Chloe several times, and Emily never mentioned any of it to me. At that time, I was working at a supermarket as a stock clerk, leaving early and returning late every day. The pay was meager, and to save money, I often brought home leftover produce from the store. Meanwhile, Jack was taking Emily, Chloe, and my mother-in-law out for fancy meals. He even used the excuse of taking Emily back to the countryside to visit family, to go on vacations with Chloe. They were playing happy families behind my back, and everyone kept it a secret from me. It wasn't until Emily was in high school that I accidentally found out about it. I was devastated. Emily offered no comfort. Instead, she demanded that I take a paternity test with her. I asked her why. She said, "Because I'm talented in singing and dancing. I'm beautiful. And you're fat and ugly. All you ever do is yell at me. There's no way you're my real mom. My mom should be someone like Aunt Chloe." Her words pierced my heart like 1,000 arrows. I asked, "If I'm not your biological mother, then your dad and grandma would know better than anyone. You've spent years blaming me for eating spicy and sweet foods while I was pregnant, saying that's what made you sick. That proves you've accepted that I'm your mother. So why are you suddenly denying it now?" She responded confidently, "What if the hospital made a mistake? Isn't it possible? There was a recent news story about switched babies. What if I was switched?" Her words infuriated me so much that I dragged her to the clinic on the spot to take a paternity test. When the results came out, she broke down in tears. "No way. How can I be your biological daughter? I don't want to have your awful genes." She claimed my genes were defective and blamed me for her illness. She said her father had good genes. He was handsome and youthful looking, while I was fat and old. She was terrified that my genes would ruin her too, making her fat and unattractive. It was always about genes. I stared at her in despair, my heart aching. I used to think it was my mother-in-law's meddling that had spoiled her, that she was just young and immature, and that her defiance was understandable. I forgave her again and again, trying to reason with her. But she still turned out this way. Now I finally understood genetics is a powerful thing. No matter how much I tried, no matter how much I sacrificed, I had raised someone selfish, heartless, and ungrateful. And to make things worse, she had a genetic mutation, one that seemed to have turned her into something even more unfeeling. Jack had his flaws. He was cruel, manipulative, and always sided with his mother. But at least he never abandoned her. Emily, on the other hand, had completely rejected her own mother. At that moment, I wanted to die. But the worst was yet to come. Her father cheated on me and demanded I leave the marriage with nothing, so he could marry Chloe Zhou. Without hesitation, Emily sided with her father and told me to get out. She even recognized Chloe as her mother. Jack had secretly transferred all his assets to his mother and Chloe long ago, keeping everything hidden from me. Even if I took him to court, I would have no chance of winning. I stopped trying to reason with Jack. I knew it was pointless. Instead, I tried appealing to Emily's emotions. "Emily, I'm your mother. I've sacrificed so much for you." But she cut me off impatiently. "Not this again. What have you sacrificed? You're just a housewife who doesn't earn a penny. All you do is ask Dad for money and act like doing some housework is such a big deal. Nobody cares about your so-called sacrifices." Her words left me pale and numb, my heart completely shattered. At that moment, despair consumed me, and I thought about ending it all. I didn't expect that. Later, I really would die. Perhaps heaven couldn't bear to see it. So I was given another chance. I came back to life, but my mind was a mess on the way home. Suddenly, I realized I had been reborn. Everything felt familiar yet strange. I wiped away my tears, deciding to get a divorce this time. And I was determined not to fight for custody. Who would want a selfish, ungrateful child with such terrible genes? As I entered the neighborhood, I was lost in thought and walked toward Building 3 without paying much attention. As I passed the central garden, I heard a familiar voice crying loudly, "This is my punishment." I told her not to eat spicy food or drink milk tea, but she wouldn't listen. I told her to make the baby wear a hat during postpartum recovery, but she refused. And now look. Her child is gravely ill. All because of her. I approached and saw my mother-in-law crying dramatically in front of a group of neighbors, recounting the story as if I were the sole cause of Emily's illness. Her performance was so convincing it seemed as if she truly believed her words. "What are you doing?" I asked sharply. She wiped her tears, turned around, and shouted at me. "I'm talking about you. You made the child sick. Do you know how much it'll cost to treat her illness?" Jack had already called her to tell her about the diagnosis. Unable to accept the truth of Emily's genetic mutation, she had come to the neighborhood to vent her frustration, blaming everything on me. "You're saying the illness is my fault?" I snapped. "Whose fault could it be if not yours?" she retorted with a voice dripping with accusation. Once again, she pulled out the same tired argument. Eating spicy food and drinking milk tea during pregnancy caused the illness. My anger boiled over. Plenty of people eat spicy food without issue. Are you saying I ate it? And that's what caused it? And I only drank milk tea twice. Are you seriously claiming that's why Emily got sick? You're ignorant. And I don't blame you for that. But you're also malicious. If you deliberately disgust me, don't expect me to stay polite. In my previous life, I had always held back during arguments, even when I was furious. But in this life, I refuse to endure her nonsense. What did you just say? She widened her eyes in disbelief. You're calling me ignorant and malicious? She jabbed her finger toward my face, so close it almost touched my eyes. My fury reached a boiling point. Without even thinking, I slapped her across the face. Why are you shouting? You're the one who keeps feeding the child random things all the time. And now you've made her sick. That slap carried 20 years of suppressed anger. In this life, I had had enough. You hit me? My mother-in-law said in utter disbelief, frozen in place for a long moment before she finally reacted. Trembling with rage, I slapped her again. Yes, I hit you. When Emily was just born, the doctor said she should only have milk, but you secretly fed her rice paste. Before she turned 1, she wasn't supposed to have salt or sugar, but you secretly gave it to her anyway. It must have been your reckless feeding habits that caused her genetic mutation. If you're going to blame someone, why not yourself? She stood there, shaking, trying to process what had just happened. In my previous life, I endured her antics for the sake of Emily. While she was intolerable, she did contribute here and there, doing some housework or stepping in during emergencies to give me a break. Because of these small gestures, I avoided direct conflict and tolerated her. On top of that, I didn't earn money myself and had to rely on Jack financially. Unless I was truly at my breaking point, I kept quiet. But nearly 20 years of this had pushed her to become even more arrogant, trampling all over me. This time, I wasn't holding back anymore. You hit me, she shrieked, bursting into dramatic sobs. People have been feeding their kids rice paste and plain water for generations. What's the big deal if I fed her some? How dare you blame me for this? I sneered. Of course I blame you. You're the reason she's sick. You fed her whatever you felt like. And now you're trying to push the blame onto me. I matched her accusations word for word, refusing to let her off the hook. No matter how much she tried to defend herself, I ignored her, just as she had always ignored my pleas. Her sobs grew louder, and the neighbors who had been watching exchanged awkward glances. I turned to them and said, "Listen carefully. Yes, I'm being a shrew today. She made my daughter sick, and she deserves to be hit. If I hear any of you gossiping about this, I'll find you and deal with you directly. Got it?" The crowd quickly dispersed, not wanting to get involved. Seeing that no one was coming to her defense, my mother-in-law dropped her act. She suddenly lunged at me, raising her hand as if to slap me back. I couldn't help but laugh at the sight of her frail figure attempting to hit me. Without hesitation, I kicked her into the nearby bushes. She lay there wailing and screaming, crying that I had injured her. My daughter-in-law hit me. I'm hurt. I stared at her coldly. Keep it up. Let's see if anyone cares. Her cries grew louder, but I stepped closer and said icily, "Are you planning to play dead and accuse me of injuring you so you can get some money out of me? Fine. How much do you want? I'll call your son right now and have him pay you. After all, we're married. His money is my money. Her sobbing faltered. Her voice caught in her throat. After a brief pause, she wailed, "I'll sue you. I'll have you arrested and thrown in jail." I smirked. "Go ahead. Do it. If I go to jail, your son will have a wife with a criminal record. Let's see if his company will still want him after that." She froze, her body stiff. She didn't know much about the law, but she had heard that if a spouse had a criminal record, it could affect their partner's employment. I leaned in and added, "In fact, I'd love to go to jail. In there, I won't have to work or take care of anyone. Meanwhile, you'll have to take care of your sick granddaughter, do all the housework, and look after your precious son. If you've got the guts, send me to jail. Let's see how you handle them both by yourself. And if you can't, then get out of my way. Don't block other people's way," I said firmly, then turned and walked off. My mother-in-law was utterly humiliated but stubbornly stayed on the ground. Despite the crowd gathered around her, not a single person stepped forward to help her. She began spreading rumors about me, bad-mouthing me behind my back. Some gullible people, especially the elderly, believed her nonsense. But the younger crowd didn't buy it. After all, who in this day and age hasn't indulged in a bit of spice during pregnancy? We live in a region known for spicy food. And what about all the young moms who proudly drink milk tea and coffee while pregnant? While my mother-in-law blabbered on, she earned agreement from a handful of older individuals who shared her outdated beliefs. But she didn't realize she was alienating the younger moms and expectant mothers in the community. They were growing increasingly annoyed with her antics. After I left, she lay on the ground wailing for a while longer. When no one paid her any attention, she grudgingly picked herself up. Despite her rural background and years of farm labor, which made her body quite sturdy, she acted as though my kick had seriously injured her. But I knew she was perfectly fine. She had fallen onto the bushes, which cushioned her fall. She complained to those nearby. "You all saw it. My daughter-in-law hit me. Why didn't anyone help me?" One person shrugged. "Your daughter-in-law is so fierce. What if she hit me too?" Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. It was clear they didn't want to get involved and were just using me as an excuse. At least there were still some sensible people in the world. Not everyone was as cold and heartless as Jack's family. After putting my mother-in-law in her place, I felt a refreshing sense of relief. In my past life, I had always suppressed my anger. I had a weak spot, my daughter, and I let that stop me from standing up for myself. But this time was different. I no longer had any weak spots. No one could manipulate me anymore. My mother-in-law had no options left. She couldn't extort money from me because I could just demand it from her son. She couldn't send me to jail either, because if I ended up there, she'd be left to manage all the housework and care for both Emily and Jack herself. Ultimately, she had no choice but to endure the humiliation. Not long after I got home, my mother-in-law returned as well. She stormed up to my door, shouting insults and claiming I had injured her. "You ungrateful, heartless woman. Having a daughter-in-law like you is the worst luck of my life. I've worked so hard taking care of your child. And this is how you repay me? Don't expect me to help you again." I flung open the door and snapped back. "You always say you're helping me take care of the child. But let me ask you, since when is Emily only my child? Your son promised he'd help raise her. But what has he actually done? We both work. We both contribute financially. I come home after work, take care of the house, and tend to Emily, staying up all night to comfort her. What has your son done besides throw some money around? You're not helping me. You're helping your son. Now get out of my sight." With that, I slammed the door shut. Her cries and wails echoed outside, but I ignored her completely. Not long after, Jack came home, carrying Emily in his arms. Exhausted, he set her down on the couch and sank into the chair, gasping for breath. The moment my mother-in-law saw him, she ran over and launched into her act again, tears streaming as she wailed. "Your wife hit me. You have to hit her back, or she'll turn this house upside down." She grabbed his arm, refusing to let go, determined to escalate the situation. Before long, there was a loud banging on my door. "Anna, how could you hit my mom?" Jack shouted furiously from outside. He had always been the filial son, defending his mother in everything. I yanked the door open and said coldly, "She insulted me first. She's been running around telling everyone that I made Emily sick because I ate spicy food and sweets during my pregnancy. Once, twice, 3 times. I've had enough of her nonsense. Jack snapped. No matter what, you shouldn't have laid a hand on her. She's your elder. I sneered. And being an elder makes her untouchable? Does being an elder mean she can act unreasonable? If she had any sense of decency, she wouldn't have been slapped. I stood my ground, and Jack and I started shouting at each other. On the couch, Emily stirred, blinking her eyes open. Dad? Grandma? She murmured groggily. Why do you look so young? Her words caught me off guard. Emily sat up, looking around in confusion. This is the old house. Didn't we move to the new one? Realization struck me like lightning. Emily had been reborn too. In my previous life, after Jack started earning more, he secretly bought a large house and registered it under Chloe's name. Chloe and her son often entertained Emily and my mother-in-law there. When Jack and I were in the middle of our divorce, they all moved into the big house together, leaving me alone in the old one. There was no way 4-year-old Emily could have known about that unless she had also been reborn. Good. This time, she could experience the consequences of her choices. At 4 years old, her rare illness had just been diagnosed. Without my care, she could see for herself what hell felt like. As for Jack, he always looked down on me for not earning money and thought he was so capable. Let's see how well he managed his career while dragging a sick child along with him. Seeing me standing there, defiant and unrepentant, my mother-in-law cried, "Where's the justice? Is there no justice left in this world?" Jack hadn't expected me to refuse to apologize and, in his frustration, shouted, "Fine. Divorce." I shrugged indifferently. Perfect. Let's get divorced. Anyone who doesn't agree is a coward. Emily immediately ran to Jack, clinging to his leg. Dad, if you get divorced, I'll go with you. My mother-in-law shoved her aside, snapping, "Who would want a sickly child like you? Your illness is all your mother's fault. Go with her. Don't think you can cling to us." Emily fell to the floor, staring in shock. She had never imagined her grandmother would reject her. I looked at her calmly and asked, "Emily, if your dad and I get divorced, who will you choose to stay with?" She snapped out of her daze and glared at me. "Of course. I'll go with Dad. Who'd want to stay with a controlling freak like you?" Good. I wasn't surprised. In my previous life, she didn't choose me either. Why would this time be any different? I said, "There's a saying, better to follow a poor mother than a rich father. Do you know what it means?" I wasn't expecting her to choose me. I just wanted her to say it out loud. So in the future, when she faced hardship, she wouldn't try to use our mother-daughter bond to manipulate me. Emily glared at me and said harshly, "Dad and Grandma are great. I want to stay with them. I don't need you to worry about me." As she spoke, she kept sneaking glances at Jack and my mother-in-law, trying to gauge their reactions. She had always been like this in the past, undermining me to curry favor with Jack and his mother. Knowing our household relied on Jack's income, they, along with Jack's mother, didn't like Emily, and naturally, they ganged up on me, using their strength against me. I nodded and said, "All right, you said it yourself. In the future, if your dad doesn't want you, don't come looking for me. Let's just cut ties forever." Emily's face flushed with anger. "If you get divorced, no one will take care of you. Who will you ask for money then? It's ridiculous that you can't even support yourself but still want to argue with me." I laughed coldly. "You think I can't take care of myself? I have a job and a salary. I don't need to ask anyone for money. Are you even thinking before you speak?" Emily turned to Jack for help. "Dad, did you hear her? She's insulting me and you." But Jack didn't even look at her. Frustrated, she tugged at his sleeve. But Jack, still fuming, snapped, "What are you yelling about? This is adult business. Stay out of it. And stop whining. You're rejecting your own mother. Your brain must be messed up from being sick. Get back to your mom where you belong." Emily flinched at his harsh words, her body trembling slightly. She hesitated before finally stepping away. Her pride hurt. I said calmly, "Oh no, Jack. She's made her choice. She wants to stay with you. Don't throw her back at me later." Jack glared at Emily, his face contorted with frustration. What do you want with me? Huh. His outburst startled Emily, and she instinctively stepped back. In my previous life, Emily spent the most time with me. I was the one who made her eat foods and take medicine she didn't like, ensured her every need was met, and tried to manage everything in the household. But the pressures of life sometimes left me overwhelmed, and I occasionally lost my temper and scolded her. Jack, on the other hand, would come home from work late and spend only a little time with her, always smiling and gentle. Because of this, Emily grew up believing Jack was the calm, kind one, and I was the unstable, angry parent. She never realized that Jack had a terrible temper. When he got angry, he'd slam the door and leave the house, no matter how chaotic things were at home. Over time, she came to idolize Jack and resent me. Now, she was finally getting a taste of her father's supposed good temper. Anna, you hit my mom. Are you going to apologize or not? Jack demanded, his anger still simmering. Why should I? I replied coldly, egged on by my mother-in-law. Jack exploded. If you won't apologize, then we're getting a divorce. Fine by me. I shot back without hesitation. The group of us stormed off to the civil affairs office to get the divorce processed. When we got there, we ended up arguing about custody of Emily. My mother-in-law loudly insisted, if you want a divorce, take that girl with you. Jack added, Anna, don't you love your daughter so much? Then you take her. I laughed bitterly. You're just trying to dump this responsibility on me. No way. I'll agree to the divorce. But I'm not taking Emily. The people around us watched our loud argument with disdain, their faces full of judgment. I could tell what they were thinking. Parents who don't want their children are despicable. But I didn't care. Fine. Then we won't get divorced. Jack said, finally calming down. Anna, let's go home. Stop making a scene here and embarrassing ourselves. Emily chimed in quickly. Mom, please stop. Don't make this worse. Let's go home, Jack said, as if I was the one causing a scene for no reason. I laughed loudly and retorted, weren't you the one who insisted on a divorce just now? How am I the one making a fuss? Who was yelling about divorcing just moments ago? Jack tried to explain himself, addressing the people around us. She hit my mom. I was angry, and I just lost my temper. Without hesitation, I walked over and slapped my mother-in-law across the face, leaving her stunned and speechless. Before anyone could react, I slapped Jack as well. I didn't just hit your mom. I'll hit you too. You worthless jerk. I said. Jack, holding his face, shook with rage. Everyone, look at this. Look at this crazy woman. I slapped him again, this time on the other cheek. That's right. I am a crazy woman. My mother-in-law, unable to hold back, lunged at me, trying to hit me, but I grabbed her hair and unleashed years of pent-up anger, hitting her relentlessly. This is for all the lies you've spread about me, for all the nasty rumors you've told. Thinking about all the stupid things you did during my recovery period makes me want to beat you to death. Enough. Let's just get divorced. Jack shouted furiously. I replied coldly, fine by me. Let's get it done. Emily already said she wants to stay with you. She made her choice. Emily backed away to Jack's side and cried out, I want Dad. Mom is so mean to me. I don't want to be with her. I shrugged and said, see? She's made it clear. Jack hesitated, panic flickering across his face. He wanted the divorce, but he didn't want to take responsibility for a sick child. Finally, he snapped, if you don't take the kid, then forget about the divorce. My mother-in-law jumped in, screaming insults at me, throwing out every curse and slur she could think of. Their hideous behavior was on full display, shocking the onlookers. The people around us who had initially assumed I was the unreasonable one now saw the truth. There was more to the story than they had thought. Realizing Jack wouldn't go through with the divorce, we had no choice but to return home. I knew this would happen. Divorce wasn't an easy option for Jack. If I left, who would take care of Emily? His lazy, useless mother who only talked big, but was completely incompetent? He knew better. Divorce would only create more problems for him. So he wanted to drag things out. But I no longer loved Emily, and I certainly didn't care about Jack. If he wanted to trap me, he'd have to see if I was willing to stay trapped. As soon as we got home, I packed my things and left. I walked out without looking back, just as Jack had done countless times before, leaving everything for someone else to deal with. I rented a small apartment and spent the rest of my money on clothes, jewelry, and skincare products. I even sent some money to my mom, marking it as payment for her help raising Emily. For years, I had lived frugally, cutting back on everything. But now, I wasn't saving a single penny anymore. Jack called me over and over, but I blocked his number. Then, I gathered all the necessary documents and filed for divorce in court. The divorce proceedings were a long and tedious process. Jack refused to cooperate, dragging everything out and slowing the progress to a crawl. This world is truly exhausting. Getting married is easy. Getting divorced is hard. If you try for a mutual agreement, but can't reach one, the divorce won't go through. Even if an agreement is reached, there's a mandatory cooling-off period for divorce. If either party changes their mind during that time, the divorce is halted. Filing for a contested divorce requires submitting mountains of paperwork. And if one party refuses to cooperate, the process can drag on for a year or more. Even after going through the legal proceedings, the first court hearing often results in a denial of the divorce. Then the entire process has to be repeated, leading to a second court case. Divorce is riddled with obstacles. But no matter how hard it is, I was determined to end this marriage. One day while I was at work, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. Annoyed, I picked up, fully prepared to tell her off. But then I heard a young voice on the other end. "Mom, did you also get reborn? Is that why you want a divorce?" Emily's voice was soft, almost tentative. I paused for a moment. "What do you need?" I asked, my tone cold. Emily continued, "You blamed me in our last life for not helping you when you got divorced. That's ridiculous. Just look at yourself. Look at your temper and the things you've done. How could any child like a mother like you? You're the kind of mom who never admits she's wrong or reflects on her behavior." I cut her off sharply. "If you have something to say, spit it out." Emily didn't expect my indifference and huffed in frustration. "Stop being so petty. Come home and cook for me." "Cook for you? Why? Just because you're sick? I have to make your meals." I laughed bitterly. I hadn't expected such a ridiculous demand, delivered with such entitlement. "You want me to cook? Why don't you ask your grandma or your dad to do it?" "They don't know how," she replied, as if that settled the matter. I scoffed. "And you think I was born knowing how to cook? If they don't know, they can learn." With that, I hung up, took a deep breath, and told myself not to get upset over an ungrateful brat. It wasn't worth it. That weekend, I made a trip back to my hometown. I asked my mom to open a new bank account under her name and set up all the financial access and passwords myself. Once everything was ready, I took the card back with me. "Anna, why are you using my bank account?" my mom asked curiously. "It's for work," I replied vaguely. "Don't worry, I won't misuse it. I plan to transfer all the money I had into this account." My mom loved me and wouldn't spend the money recklessly, but she was easily influenced by my dad and brother. They had no sense of financial responsibility, and any money left in the house would eventually be wasted. To avoid that, I didn't tell her my real intentions. After returning to the city, I started withdrawing cash little by little and depositing it into the account in my mom's name. In total, I had about 70,000 saved up. Not a lot, but enough to keep safe. From then on, whenever I got paid, I would withdraw small amounts of cash and deposit them into the account. Since the funds were technically under my mom's name, they wouldn't count as marital assets during the divorce proceedings. Divorce courts scrutinize joint bank accounts and financial transactions, but small withdrawals like mine wouldn't raise any red flags. Large sums might have been traced, but small amounts were much harder to track. Of course, this method didn't allow me to hide a significant amount of money, so I needed additional strategies. I spoke with a friend who had gone through a divorce and now ran a bakery. After a long heart-to-heart, she agreed to help me. I began buying baked goods from her at 10 times the regular price. She would then refund the excess money to me. Using this method, I funneled more funds away while sending baked goods to Emily as a gesture of goodwill. In my previous life, Emily had always wanted sweets and pastries, but I had strictly forbidden them because of her illness. Her grandmother and father would sneak them to her behind my back, and she grew to idolize them while resenting me for being too harsh. This time, I decided to be the nice one. I sent her treats regularly. Whether she ate them or not was up to her. I didn't care. As long as the money was in my hands, even if someone traced the transactions, I could simply claim it was all spent on daily living expenses, leaving no room for argument. Using the same method, I started purchasing clothes and other necessities for Emily at ridiculously high prices. In this way, I managed to clean out almost all of my salary without leaving any traceable assets. Some might think I was ruthless, but Jack was far worse in my previous life. He had outright hidden his salary, telling me he only earned $10,000 a month while secretly transferring the rest of his income to other accounts over the years. Divorce courts only check financial records from the past 5 years. And since I had no idea what his actual annual salary was, I couldn't even investigate. When we divorced, I ended up with nothing. Now, I was merely paying him back in kind. Realistically, all I could do was protect my own earnings. His money was tightly controlled by him, and I couldn't touch a cent of it. Using the bank account under my mother's name, I started investing in stocks through Jack's brokerage account. I had learned about personal finance during my time as a stay-at-home mom. Trying to find ways to make money, I kept a close eye on the financial markets and knew which stocks would soar in the future and when they would crash. As long as I held onto the stocks long enough and sold them at the right time, I could secure a lifetime of financial stability. With everything set up, I allowed myself to relax. I ate well, slept soundly, and lived comfortably. Meanwhile, the divorce case dragged on as expected. Jack, realizing I wasn't coming home or taking care of Emily, dumped her on his mother and continued with his life as usual. After all, he was a big man with an important career to build. There was no way he could take on childcare. Naturally, his mother bore the brunt of the household responsibilities, suddenly overwhelmed by the demands of cooking, cleaning, and taking care of Emily. She no longer had time to chat with the neighbors about how awful I was or gossip about me while dancing in the square. Her leisurely days of shopping and complaining were replaced with the harsh reality of managing a household. Jack, busy with work, left her to handle everything. Frustrated with the situation, she began taking it out on Emily. Emily, for the first time, experienced her grandmother's true colors. One day, I bumped into a friend while shopping. She hesitated for a moment before asking, "Anna, are you really not going to take care of Emily anymore?" "Why?" I asked, sensing something was wrong. The friend, knowing about Emily's illness, looked worried. "Do you know how your mother-in-law is taking care of her? She's completely neglecting her." She explained what had been happening since I left. At first, under Jack's instructions, my mother-in-law reluctantly followed the doctor's orders, preparing separate meals for Emily. But within a few days, she found it too troublesome and started cutting corners. Instead of making meals specifically tailored to Emily's needs, she began cooking the same food for both adults and children. If she wants to eat, fine. If not, she can go hungry, my mother-in-law would say dismissively. Thankfully, Emily had been reborn and knew she couldn't eat plain white rice at this stage. She forced herself to eat the vegetables, and when she couldn't stand it anymore, she climbed onto a stool to cook her own meals. It was exhausting for her, but she managed. That's why she had called me earlier, demanding I come back to cook for her, because even her grandmother refused to make proper meals. As for physical therapy, my mother-in-law treated it as optional. She half-heartedly supervised a few exercises, rushing through them and often skipping them altogether. Emily, who had always hated exercise, was secretly relieved that no one was forcing her to do it anymore. Hearing all this, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Let her enjoy her freedom. Then, I thought, Jack's mother refused to make separate meals for Emily. After cooking 2 meals for herself, Emily grew tired of the effort. She didn't think her condition was that serious, believing I had always overreacted. Eventually, she decided to eat whatever her grandmother served. Emily knew she wasn't supposed to have sugar, but without anyone watching her, she couldn't control her cravings. In the past, I had kept her diet strictly monitored. Now, with no one enforcing the rules, she started sneaking sweets. One day, I saw Emily eating a piece of cake in the neighborhood. A friend who was with me remarked, "That's not okay. Cake has so much sugar." I shrugged and replied with a faint smile, "Her dad and grandma don't care. So why should I?" "But she's your daughter," the friend argued, looking shocked. "So what?" I said coldly. "When we were getting divorced, she chose to side with her dad and fight against me. If she's so ungrateful, let her deal with the consequences herself." The friend stared at me, stunned. Meanwhile, the legal process for the divorce dragged on, but I didn't give up. I knew it was a slow process. As the timeline progressed, I packed my bags and returned home. When Jack's mother heard the sound of the door, she rushed into the living room. Seeing me, her face twisted in disdain. "Oh, back already? Weren't you so determined not to come back?" she sneered. Emily heard the commotion and came out too. She glanced at me with a smirk. "I thought you were so tough, but in the end, you came crawling back." Ignoring their remarks, I walked straight to my bedroom. That evening, I went into the kitchen and cooked an elaborate meal, filling the table with dishes. Emily came in and said, "You don't need to make separate food for me anymore. I've been eating regular meals for 2 months, and nothing bad has happened." Without looking at her, I replied flatly, "I didn't make this for you. Don't flatter yourself." Annoyed, Emily pouted. "You used to say I couldn't eat regular food, that I couldn't eat this or that. Well, I've been eating whatever I want, and nothing's happened. Doesn't that prove you were wrong all along?" Raising an eyebrow, I asked, "So you think I was wrong to make separate meals for you and restrict your snacks?" "Of course. Those meals you made were terrible. I hated them." Emily snapped. I nodded. "All right. I was wrong then. And physical therapy is useless too," she added. "That stuff doesn't work. You should just do the cleaning and laundry instead. Grandma always piles my clothes up for a week before washing them." She grumbled a bit more, demanding that I wash her clothes. I ignored her completely. Frustrated, she stomped out of the room. That night, Jack came home early after hearing I was back. He even brought a bouquet of roses, trying to mend things between us. I pretended to be pleased, taking the flowers with a softened expression. "I made a full meal tonight. Let's all sit down and eat," I said gently. The family gathered around the table, clearly still disliking me but eager for me to resume my duties as their live-in maid. They forced themselves to act polite, playing along. I brought out a bottle of white wine and encouraged Jack to drink, thinking I was trying to make amends. He happily drank half the bottle. Soon, he passed out, completely unconscious. Dragging him to the bedroom, I used his fingerprint to unlock his phone and started searching through his messages. In my previous life, Jack had once admitted that, after Emily was diagnosed, the stress drove him to visit a prostitute several times. I had been waiting for this moment. I quickly found a WeChat contact labeled Procurement Xiaozhang. Their chat history was explicit and shocking. At first glance, the name Procurement Xiaozhang sounded like a work contact. But who would have guessed it was actually a prostitute? Their messages included flirtatious exchanges, explicit photos, and even negotiations over prices. Full service for 500, overnight for 800, and specific charges for certain positions and requests. I took screenshots of everything. Then, I continued combing through his chat history, one by one. As expected, I discovered more incriminating evidence. He had private conversations with friends where he insulted his boss and trashed his company. He called his boss a stingy, bald idiot and a useless waste of space. He criticized the company, calling it corrupt and claiming the higher-ups were incompetent and ignorant. Jack always thought highly of himself, looking down on everyone else. But in reality, his position wasn't that great, and he was simmering with resentment. His anger made him reckless, saying things that even bordered on highly sensitive topics. I didn't hesitate to take more screenshots and upload them to my email for safekeeping. The next day, when Jack went to work, I followed him to his office. He was visibly surprised to see me there. "What are you doing here?" he asked, frowning. "Jack, let's get divorced," I said directly. His face darkened. He glanced around nervously, then lowered his voice. "Why are you causing trouble again out of nowhere? If you don't want to lose your job, you'd better cooperate." I replied, holding up my phone. Jack's expression turned confused, but he picked up his phone to check the messages I had just sent him. The moment he saw the photos, his face went pale. Anna, you went through my private messages? What do you want? He hissed. I want a divorce, I said, shaking my phone. If you don't agree, I'll walk straight into your office right now and show these photos to everyone. Jack's career was everything to him. In my previous life, he had once admitted that his career progression hinged on a key moment when he had agreed to an overseas assignment. At the time, he and another candidate were competing for the role, and while the other person hesitated due to family obligations, Jack accepted without a second thought. That assignment had come at a crucial time for Emily, who was undergoing a pivotal rehabilitation checkup. Jack didn't even consider staying to help. Family always came second to his career. After returning from the 6-month assignment, he got a promotion and a substantial raise. Judging by the timing, this opportunity was likely approaching again, which explained why Jack was so eager for me to come back. He had even gone so far as to buy flowers and drink the wine I had offered him last night, putting on a show of affection to keep me around. He needed me at home so he could leave without any worries. But now, with these incriminating screenshots, I had the power to ruin everything for him. If his boss saw those messages, not only would his promotion and raise vanish, but he might even lose his job altogether. This company was prestigious and extremely difficult to get into. Losing his position here would be a devastating blow. Jack gritted his teeth and growled. Fine. Divorce it is. I smiled. The child stays with you. Fine. Emily's mine. Happy now, he snapped, his fury barely contained. Divorce reveals a person's true character. Jack thought that by keeping custody of Emily, he could claim the majority of the marital assets as well. I laughed coldly. Absolutely not. The assets will be split equally. Everything acquired during the marriage must be divided fairly. I had already transferred all my money and left nothing behind. Jack didn't believe me. Fine. Let's check the bank records then, he said smugly. Go ahead. I replied calmly. My financial transactions were clean and straightforward. Instead, he uncovered some of his own private expenses that now needed to be reconciled. If you want my used makeup and women's coats, I don't mind selling them and splitting the proceeds, I said mockingly. Fine. Then your clothes and belongings will be up for sale too, he snapped, furious but powerless to do anything. To avoid pushing him into complete retaliation, I made a small concession. I don't want the house. Let's consider it a one-time payment for child support. We argued further about the details of the support payments. All right, I said. If you want child support, the house needs to be sold, and we'll split the proceeds evenly. Afterward, I'll send monthly payments. Whether or not I actually send them remains to be seen. Jack immediately began calculating in his head. The house's current value was high, and selling it in a hurry would be a loss. He also knew that collecting child support after a divorce wasn't always guaranteed. In the end, seeing that I wasn't trying to take advantage of him, he reluctantly signed the papers. I silently celebrated, knowing the housing market would crash next year. That house would soon lose significant value. It was better to leave it to him. After the mandatory 1-month cooling-off period, I finally received the divorce certificate, holding it in my hands. I was so overwhelmed with emotion that I almost cried. On the day of the divorce, Emily tagged along and confronted me. Mom, are you really going through with this divorce? Yes, I replied firmly. Her confusion was evident. You do realize Dad will be earning $500,000 a year soon, right? Why not just stay with him? Be nicer. And you'll never have to worry about anything for the rest of your life. I looked at her calmly and said, Have you forgotten about Chloe Zhou? Emily scoffed. Well, you're old, ugly, and have a bad temper. Isn't it natural for Dad to cheat on you? Her words stung, but I stared at her without flinching. In my previous life, Emily's behavior and remarks were baffling. Now I understood. Perhaps her condition had affected her brain, making her more foolish and insensitive. I nodded. Fair enough. I hope you won't come crying to me in the future. Emily snorted. You're so stubborn. You never admit your mistakes. Do you? Let me tell you. I don't need your food. I don't need to do your stupid exercises. and I'll be just fine. All those fights at home back then. All the stress. It was because of you. Can't you see that? If you had realized your faults, I wouldn't have argued with you. Grandma wouldn't have argued with you. And Dad wouldn't have cheated. I gave her a sarcastic thumbs up and walked away. She truly believed all the discipline I had imposed in my previous life was unnecessary. In the 2 months prior, she had indulged in snacks and rice without any apparent issues. Now, after the divorce, she fully let herself go. She ate whatever her grandmother cooked and snacked freely without restrictions. Like many diabetics, she knew consuming sugar could cause problems. But since there were no immediate repercussions, she fell into the trap of wishful thinking. 2 weeks later, one day, suddenly, Emily experienced paralysis on one side of her body, and her vision became blurry. She begged her grandmother to take her to the hospital, but her grandmother, unwilling to spend the money, scolded her for making a fuss and refused to go. It wasn't until Jack came home that Emily was finally taken to the hospital. After an examination, the doctors revealed that her blood sugar levels were dangerously high, to the point of causing nerve damage. Emily was admitted to the hospital. At the same time, Jack was preparing for a 6-month business trip. However, his mother refused to take on the responsibility of caring for Emily during that time. You're planning to leave your sick child with me for 6 months? How could you even think of that? She's your daughter, not mine. His mother shouted. Lazy and selfish. She had no intention of taking care of a chronically ill child. Jack, pressured by her tantrums, had no choice but to cancel the trip. The opportunity didn't wait for him. Someone else at the company eagerly volunteered to fill the role, and Jack missed his chance for a promotion and raise. Now, it was uncertain when another opportunity would come his way. Meanwhile, I had resigned from my job, ended my lease, and taken care of personal matters. With everything settled, I decided to deal Jack a final blow before moving on. During our divorce, I had used the evidence of his solicitation chats to force his agreement. What Jack didn't know was that I also had records of his conversations insulting his boss and badmouthing his company. Now that we were divorced, I anonymously sent those incriminating messages to his superiors. At that company, Jack could forget about promotions or raises. If he wasn't outright fired, he'd be lucky. After Emily was discharged from the hospital, her body was permanently damaged. The doctors told her and Jack that because of her lack of dietary control, many parts of her body had sustained irreversible harm. Even with strict dietary management in the future, she would never be able to live like a normal person. To make matters worse, Jack and his mother, realizing Emily could never fully recover, began to resent her. Treatment was expensive, required constant care, and was far too troublesome for them. In my previous life, I had willingly taken on those burdens, devoting myself to Emily's care. Yet she had dismissed my efforts as meaningless, arguing with me and idolizing her father instead. Now, she finally understood how vital my efforts had been. Jack blamed Emily for ruining his career, his heart filled with resentment. His mother saw Emily as a useless burden, unable to carry on the family name, hindering Jack's potential remarriage, and now draining money due to her illness. To her, Emily's death would have been preferable. It didn't take long for them to give up entirely. They stopped her treatments, ended her rehabilitation, and left her to fend for herself. But Emily wasn't a child anymore, and she didn't want to die. Despite her frail body, she forced herself to cook her own meals and do her own rehabilitation exercises. She finally understood that my strictness in the past had been for her own good. Desperate to contact me, Emily tried to find a way, but she didn't have my information. I had resigned and moved to another city to start a new life. Years later, during the Lunar New Year, I returned to my hometown. As I walked toward the village entrance, a thin figure suddenly rushed toward me and blocked my path. The person stared at me for a long moment before tentatively calling out, "Mom." It took me a moment to recognize her, and when I did, a wave of complicated emotions surged through me. "Emily," I said softly. She looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. "Mom, you're so beautiful." It had been years since we'd seen each other. I was dressed in a clean, elegant camel coat, my hair neatly styled, my figure well maintained, and my face youthful, thanks to aesthetic treatments. I had put on some light makeup, Emily, on the other hand, looked frail and gaunt, her dry skin making her appear far older than her years. I brushed my hair back and said, "When you don't have to take care of others, do chores every day, worry about money, or scrimp and save, you'll naturally have the time and resources to take care of yourself. That's why I look like this, just like how your dad used to look in my past life." Emily remained silent, her expression tense. "What brings you here?" I asked. She suddenly fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "I was wrong. Mom. I want to be with you." I looked at her coolly. "Didn't you choose to stay with your dad?" She sobbed harder. "He doesn't care about me at all. He hits me and yells at me constantly. 2 years ago, he lost his job. He's too proud to take a lower-paying one, so he blames me for ruining his career. He beats me every day. I can't take it anymore. If this goes on, I'll die." After I left, Jack was discreetly forced out of his job, unemployed and stuck at home. Tensions with his mother escalated until she stormed out and returned to her hometown, leaving him to deal with everything. Despite his reluctance to spend money on Emily, he couldn't let her starve. Otherwise, he'd risk going to jail. But every task he had to do was accompanied by anger and verbal abuse, which eventually escalated to physical violence. He resented Emily for holding him back and blamed her for his ruined career, turning her life into a nightmare. Emily had been trying to find me ever since, hoping to escape from him. I said calmly, "Emily, I wish I could forgive you, but in both lives, you chose your dad. You've never cared about me at all. You once said you didn't want to inherit my bad genes, claiming your dad's genes were perfect. Now I think you were right. Your heartless nature must come from him. I won't take you back." Emily broke down, crying uncontrollably, but I turned and walked away without looking back. Later, I met a friend for dinner at a restaurant. To my surprise, I saw Chloe Zhou there, clinging to a middle-aged man with a flirtatious expression. Word of my return must have reached Jack because he stormed into the restaurant, demanding child support. He looked terrible, older, fatter, uglier, and his hair was thinning. Whatever he had gone through in these past few years had left him in a pitiful state. "I already paid the agreed amount of child support," I said firmly, pulling out our divorce agreement to prove it. Jack, losing his temper, grabbed a bowl and threw it at me. I dodged, and the bowl flew straight toward Chloe. She screamed in terror. The middle-aged man she was with exploded with rage, grabbed Jack by the collar, and started yelling. Chloe, seeing the chaos, stormed over and slapped Jack several times before kicking him hard and storming out with the man. Taking advantage of the commotion, I slipped out and followed Chloe discreetly. As I suspected, she was back to being a mistress. Without hesitation, I informed the man's wife about Chloe's affair. This woman, unlike the meek and forgiving version of myself in my previous life, wasted no time. She gathered a few people, barged into Chloe's place, and beat her mercilessly. They even poured boiling water on her face, disfiguring her. Chloe's downfall was swift and brutal. Not only was she thrown out of the man's house, but his wife also reclaimed all the assets Chloe had taken and left her drowning in debt. Jack's failure to secure child support only fueled his anger, and he took it out on Emily. When drunk, he beat her mercilessly, venting his frustrations through punches and kicks. Emily, already frail, couldn't withstand the abuse. Jack's drunken violence eventually went too far, and he killed her. He was arrested soon after. The investigation revealed years of abuse, neglect, and refusal to provide proper medical treatment for Emily. When the news broke, public outrage exploded. The court sentenced Jack to death, and he became a symbol of parental failure and cruelty. Jack's mother wasn't spared from the fallout. Her reputation was utterly destroyed. Since Jack's father had passed away years ago, she had relied solely on her only son for support. Now, with him sentenced to death, she had no one left to depend on. She cried endlessly, but no one sympathized with her. Instead, neighbors began throwing trash and dirty water in front of her door, making it nearly impossible for her to leave her home. Unable to endure the humiliation, she returned to her hometown. But word of her and Jack's misdeeds had already spread there as well. The entire village looked down on her, treating her with disdain. In her final years, she lived in isolation, shunned by everyone around her. She passed away one winter night, her body lying unnoticed for a long time before anyone discovered her death.